All right, guys, I hate to do it, but today we got to talk about Bryce Young. He's been officially benched by the Panthers in favor of Andy Dalton, and I don't take any joy in doing this. I was a big fan of him at Bama, thought he'd work out in the NFL. I think I kind of overlooked his flaws. So we have to talk about him being benched, kind of go over all the stuff that went down surrounding him being traded to Carolina. I put out a short earlier today talking about, is he the biggest draft bust of all time? I think he's at least in the top three. He's definitely in the conversation, and that's just his play. When you include all the other circumstances, like what the Panthers gave up to bring him to the team, I think he's pretty comfortably the biggest bust ever when you just put the circumstances around it. Because we've seen other number one overall picks just be terrible on the field. That's one thing. But when you factor in everything the team gave up to get him and who was drafted right after him, we're going to talk about all that. So the thing I find insane about this is usually when you're a number one overall pick, even if you suck, you're usually on scholarship for the first 2 years of your career. Even if you're just flat out awful, if you're that high of a pick, you're typically given 2 seasons no matter what happens. Bryce Young was benched after the second game of his second season. So that just tells you how bad he is. And let's take a look at what he did in those 2 games from this year, because I don't know if everyone was really looking at his numbers from these first 2 games, but you can probably guess they're dreadfully bad if he was benched. Week 1 against the Saints in New Orleans, he put up 161 passing yards, 0 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and he threw the ball 30 times, only completing 13 of those passes. That's 43 completion percentage. He was sacked 4 times in that game, and as you know, they got their head caved in by the Saints in that game. And then this past Sunday against the Chargers, he had just 84 passing yards with no touchdowns. He threw an interception. At least his completion percentage was a lot better at 18 for 26. That's 69%. He took only 2 sacks, but to throw under 100 passing yards in the modern NFL 2024, and it's not like he has no one around him. He's got Deontay Johnson. They drafted Xavier Legette in the first round, or another receiver. Adam Thielen's a veteran guy. I'm not saying this is like, a dream team of receivers here, but it's not like he's playing with nobody. There's some talent. They've tried to invest something into that receiver core, and even with that, he had under 100 passing yards in a game, and obviously hasn't thrown a touchdown in these first 2 games. So I kind of get it from Carolina's perspective in the point of he's playing so bad. It's still young in the season. If Andy Dalton can just be serviceable, maybe we'll have a chance. But when you look at it from the other side, you're basically destroying whatever confidence Bryce Young had. And I'm not saying his confidence meter was high, but let's say it was a 1 out of 10. Benching him this early into his career has to put him at like a negative 10. That just killed any potential confidence Bryce Young is going to have. And I really do feel bad for this guy. I know he's making a lot of money. So in the grand scheme of life, he's a big winner. But for his NFL career, it's looking like it's probably over. And I wanted to take a look at everything the Carolina Panthers gave up to bring in Bryce Young, which really makes this, I think, solidifies this as the worst draft pick ever because they gave up all this stuff to bring him in. So number 1, they gave up DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore is pretty comfortably a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. The guy has had pretty mediocre to bad quarterback play basically his entire career, but he's a multi-time Pro Bowler. He's gone over 1,000 yards a bunch of times in his career. He's played with Justin Fields for a year, and as a Steelers fan, I can tell you Justin Fields is no great passer. Still found a way to have over 1,000 yards with Fields last year. He played with Sam Darnold in Carolina. He played with a bad Baker in Carolina. He played with an old Cam Newton in Carolina. And yet he's managed to be a really, really good player. So just imagine if he had an elite QB. So that's really bad right there. DJ Moore is a stud. He's a guy who every team in the NFL would want to have on their team. Then let's look at the picks that they gave up. So their 2023 first-round pick, Darnell Wright, is who the Bears took there. That's a starting offensive lineman for them. So that's one starter right there. Their 2023 second-round pick, which turned into Tyreek Stevenson, which is their starting corner alongside Jalen Johnson. Tyreek Stevenson looks really, really good. So they got a starting O-lineman. They got their starting number 2 corner out of this trade. And then, of course, their 2024 4 first-rounder, which turned out to be the number 1 overall pick, and became Caleb Williams. Now, we know Caleb is struggling, but Caleb still has that massive upside. And on top of that, the Panthers still owe their 2025 second-round pick to the Bears as well. So they still owe some assets too. So that's everything they gave up to bring in Bryce Young. So you gave the Bears 3 starters, a starting lineman, a starting corner, and their starting quarterback, and DJ Moore. And you still owe them a second-round pick for a guy who played not even 2 seasons for you, didn't even complete his second year. And I think this is really what makes it even worse is the guy who was selected directly after Bryce Young at the number 2 overall pick in 2023 was C.J. Stroud. Because if the Panthers would have taken CJ, then giving the Bears all that shit would have been fine. You would have been perfectly fine with giving all that up if you're getting C.J. Stroud in return. But they didn't take CJ. They took Bryce Young instead. And C.J. Stroud, that just makes this sting so much worse, because to see what CJ has blossomed into, making the playoffs his first year as a starter in the NFL as a rookie with a rookie head coach, taking his Texans team from the year before he got there, they were the worst team in their division, to his first year there, they win the division. This year they're 2-0. I think he has a strong argument of already a top 3 QB. He's in that argument, if not top 5. And I think he has a strong MVP case. He even got some MVP buzz last year as a rookie. So on top of him, on top of Bryce Young not being a good player, that's already bad enough in itself. That's already a disaster. He can't play. But number 2, all the shit we just went over that the Bears got in return for Bryce Young. And then number 3, C.J. Stroud, the guy taken directly after him, is a superstar. So all that coupled together leads me to say this is the worst draft selection in the history of the National Football League. I don't think it'll ever be topped. This is one of the all-time trades. For the Bears, it's one of the all-time great trades. For the Panthers, it's one of the worst trades in sports history. So let me know your thoughts on this. If you're a Panthers fan, really feel for you. I'm sorry. If you made it this far in the video, appreciate it. Please like and subscribe.